All right, hello back. This is where we left because of the fire alarm. We were implementing the procedure to simulate the urgent care. We were working on the urgent care class. We first are going to initialize the model when we are running the simulation sub. So by initializing the model, again, remember the initialization part was here. We are cleaning calendar, scheduling the first arrival, and then we are going to check the calendar to see if there is any event that still needs to be processed in the calendar. So that's what we have here. Do while the calendar number of event is greater than 0, and then we are going to check the time of the next event. And if the time of the next event is greater than time to stop, then that means that we have to stop the simulation. So that's we at here stop, and we exit do. So do here is referring to do while. So as soon as I realize that the time of the next event is greater than the time to stop the simulation, then I exit this loop. Otherwise, I'm going to get the next event in the calendar, and the way to do it is call calendar and get next event. Now I'm going to process this event. So let's assume that we have this process this event sub. We haven't yet implemented it, but um, assume that, let's for a moment assume that we have this sub, and I'm going to get the event and send it to this sub to be processed. And that's all for the simulate part. So now let's implement this process this event. It's fairly easy. So process this event, and this event, it is a simulation event that I'm passing to this sub. So the purpose of this procedure is to identify the type of the event that needs to be processed. Remember that in our calendar, we are scheduling two types of events: arrival of a new patient and end of service. So we need to find which type of event we are processing. And we can use select case, um, this event type, that allows us to compare the type of this event to different possible event types. So now if we go back to simulation event, remember we had defined this enumerator in VBA, event types, that tells us the types of the event. Time. Is it arrival or is it an end of exam? Okay, so select case checks the value or the type of this event that is passed to this sub, and if the type is arrival of the new patient, I'm going to send it to process arrival of a new patient that we implemented um, today. And remember that the process arrival of a new patient needs the patient ID. And this is what we have already implemented. So this event, we have the patient ID. Okay, so whenever we schedule an event on the calendar, if the event is arrival of a new patient, we are also specifying the patient ID. And if the event is exam, end of exam, we were also recording the exam room ID. So if it is an end of exam, then we do process end of an exam. And again, remember that for this we need to pass the exam room ID. So we pass exam room ID. Okay. So now when we look at the simulate sub, we are initializing our system. Then as long as there is an event in our calendar, we check if the time of the next event is greater than time to stop. If the time of the next event is greater than the time to stop, then we stop the simulation. Otherwise, we need to read or retrieve the next event on the calendar and process this event. So we send the event to this sub. This sub determines the type of the event. If it is arrival of a new patient, it passes to this sub, which is here, process arrival of a new patient. We implemented this today, and if the sub is end of exam, it passes to end of exam. Now the only thing that is left is going back to the main sub of the simulation. So we had it in the module urgent care simulation. So let's delete everything we have here. So I need to define right. So we are going to first read the inputs. So the inputs of the model is here. So we have number of replication in this cell. This is time to stop. This is hours open, the number of exam rooms, the patient into arrival time, and the exam duration. So if we go back, what I need to do is uh, replicating the urgent care. So I'm going to define this index as long, and for rep index equal to 1 to number of replication that is needed. That's located here, sorry, here, number of replications, so to range, number of replication, value, index. All right, so for each replication, I need to create an urgent care. Okay, I'm setting my that is my urgent care is new urgent care. Sorry, as urgent care, and then my urgent care to have it a new. Okay, and then my urgent care dot create. So there are few inputs that I need to pass. Hours open, located here. Hours open value. The next one is the exam, the number of exam rooms here. Range value. Then I need to pass the patient into arrival time. Range value. And the final argument is the exam duration. Range, exam duration, value, and that's all. So this is how we create our urgent care object. The next step is to simulate this urgent care. So I can just call my urgent care dot simulate, and this requires me to pass the time to stop, which is here. And that's all. So if you want to make sure that everything is at least we don't have any syntax error, you can do debug and then here is one problem. Okay, that's something that I fix later, but that's all we needed to implement to have the basics of our urgent care, discrete event urgent care model. So now if you want to see how it is working, we can open the urgent care model part 2, trace and sample path. So here, uh, in order to one of the most effective validation method in discrete event simulation is to generate a trace of what is happening in our model. So this is what we are going to do next. So essentially we want to output whatever is happening in our model. For example, here at time 0 we are creating an urgent care, at time 0 again creating exam room 1, exam room 2, and I show you shortly how it is working. Also, we can show some of the behaviors of our model. We will talk more about it in the next lecture, but here I'm just showing the number of patients in the system. So you see that at time 0, again, if you remember, we assume that the first patient arrives exactly at time 0. So this is, we have one patient, after a while the second patient comes, and then we have the end of exam here, we go down, the next patient arrives. So we you can also see the behavior of the sample path or the number of patients in the system uh, based on the different values as we choose for the parameter. So I'm running it with assuming that we have 2 exam rooms. Every 0.2 hours a patient arrives, and each exam takes 0.4. So when we look at the sample path now, you see that it has a different behavior. Initially we start with 1, after a while it gets 2, then the second patient arrives, we have 3 patients in the system, but we have immediately we have an end of exam, so it goes down, and then next patient come, the next end of exam. So this is how it is working, and we can increase this, for example, to 5, and if we run it again, you see that we now have a different sample path. So it's going up until our 18, and this is where we stop receiving or accepting patients. So gradually it goes down. So in the next lecture, we will talk about how to make it a stochastic. Remember that for now, we are assuming that the patient arrival time and the duration of exams are all fixed. So let's look at the code. In order to generate these trays, I have added this module. So it is a relatively straightforward module. It initializes the process. So what it does is comes and cleans everything here and set up the header. I will show you in a minute. And then if I want to add to this trace, I only need to call add to trace. And what it gets is the replication index, the simulation time, and the text message that I want to show, and then it puts it here. It puts the time here and the message here. And for sample path, we have a similar module for reporting the sample path. Here is the number of patients in urgent care. So again, initialize sample path, it cleans up everything here, and then add to sample path. Whenever I need to add a number here, I can call this sub, and it gets a replication, simulation time, and uh, the number of patients that are currently in the system. Now let's go through the code step by step and see. Let's see how it is working. So as I mentioned before, the simulation runs from the main sub. So this is where I started running the model, and this sub is in fact connected to this button here. Okay, so when I click this button, this is the sub that will get executed. So I want to step through these steps to these lines, and in I can use a step into. So if you don't have this toolbar, right click somewhere on the toolbar and then make sure that the debug is checked. On Mac, I imagine there is a different functions for a step into. So now if I'm here, I click a step into or F8, I go through different lines. So I'm turning off the screen updating, and I'm initializing the trace. So as I mentioned, if the trace is on, it selects the sheet trace, and it clears everything on the trace, and then it sets up the header. So we have replication, one, time, and message. And we are doing the same thing with initial sample path. So if this we select the sample path sheet, we clear everything that we had reported before, and then we enter the label, the headers, right? And then for now I'm generating only one replication, but for as many replication as we need, we execute this sub. We are making an urgent care. To create an urgent care, we need these inputs: hours open, number of exam rooms, patient arrival time, and the exam room. So we add to the tray. So I'm going to, instead of going into the sub in order to save time, I can just step over this function. So that means that VBA will execute whatever inside this command, but I don't want to go into every step. So step over. So you see that now at time 0, we are creating an urgent care. So this is the message that I am passing. This is the time, and this is the replication index, and that's what is being reported here. We store the hours open, we create the calendar, and now I have 2 exam rooms. I'm going to create 2 exam rooms. So exam room 1, this is ID, and going to create the exam room. I save the ID of the exam room, and also on the I will show on the trace that exam room 1 is created. I add the exam room to the collection of exam rooms. We need to destruct the object that we just created and we are done with. We go to create the second exam room, and now ID is 2. We create the second exam room, and the trace reports that the second exam room is created, and so on. Then we go and create the waiting room. So this sub is empty for now. We will add a few things later on to this sub. Now I can add to the trace that waiting room is created. We store the patient's inter-arrival time and the exam duration, and then we simulate the urgent care. So when we call simulate, here we first run the initialization procedure. So initialization is that we make sure that the calendar is empty, right? So this is the sub to create the calendar. It jumps into the simulation calendar. So it goes through the calendar and clear every event that is already scheduled. We need to schedule the arrival of the first patient. The first patient is arriving at time 0, and we are going to give it ID 1. Again, this is we add to the trace that a patient A new patient will arrive at time 0. We store the required information, and then we schedule it. We schedule this event to the calendar. And remember, this is the procedure to schedule a new event. We can step out because I don't want to go through all the lines. So we can use a step out to go back to where we were before. And now the patients in the system should be set to 0 as part of the initialization. Now I have one event on the calendar. This is the arrival of the first patient. Okay. The time of the next event is 0, the arrival of the new patient, and it is less than the time to stop the simulation. So I'm going to retrieve the next event and process it. So get new event gets executed first. In order to get the next event, these are the collection of events on the event calendar. I get the first one. I will advance time to the time of that event. This is the property of getting a new event, and then I will remove that from the calendar. Now that this event is passed to the sub, I need to determine the type of this event. The type of this event is the arrival. It is arrival of a new patient. So I will pass this event to process arrival of a new patient. We are to process the arrival of a new patient, we need a patient ID. So this is the first patient that is coming, so patient ID. We report to trace that we are processing the arrival of patient 1. We create this patient, so you see that patient 1 is created. We increase the number of patients in the system by 1, and now that this value has changed, we are reporting to the sample path that at time 0, now we have 1 patient, okay? Then we go and check the status of each room. If we find an empty room, then we send the patient to that room. So this is our new patient. We will also tell the exam room how long this exam would take, and also we are passing the calendar so that the exam room can write on the urgent care calendar. So when we pass it here, this is the patient, this is the patient coming, exam room duration, and the simulation calendar. So we report the trace that patient 1 moved to exam room 1. Now we set the patient being examined to this patient that just passed. We change the status to busy, and we determine the exam finish time. So this is our calendar time. This is the duration of exam, which is 0.5. I'm using this VBA round function because I noticed that sometimes VBA has a significant round of error. So with adding this, I'm sure that I'm trying to make sure that the if to prevent that problem. So it is, you can remove this VBA.round and see what happens. It is not a huge problem, but this way, this is a more accurate way of finding the exam find time. But at any rate, so this is the current time for the simulation calendar. I determining the exam finish time to be 0.5. So I'm creating the end of exam event here. And if you see here, the trace is also reported that exam in exam room 1 will be finished at 0.5. And I schedule this on the calendar. So we can step out here again. So we found an idle room. We send the patient to that exam room, and therefore we are going to set this variable to true. If an idle exam room found, it is true, so we can exit 4. And here we checked, we found an idle exam room, so we don't need to send the patient to the waiting room. And remember that whenever a patient arrives, I'm going to schedule the arrival of the next patient. So here I'm finding the arrival of the next patient, which is the current time plus patient into arrival time. And if this new arrival is greater than hours open, then that means that patient comes at a very late time. This didn't happen now, so the new arrival time remains to be at 0.2. And I'm creating the arrival of a new patient. Here you see that in the trace that gets reported, and schedule that to the calendar. Okay, then we go back to the simulate sub, and we keep doing it until we either do not have any events, or if the time of next event is greater than the time to stop. So if I let it run, if I click continue, then we can see the full trace here, and this is a very effective way to validate your model and also to identify any problem with the model. It shows exactly what's happening at any time in your model. And so this is the trace of the model, and this is one sample path for uh, assuming that we are trying to show the number of patients in urgent care. And um, you, you should try to play with these parameters, see what happens. For example, if I change it to 3 exam rooms, if I simulate it, then let's look at the sample path. So now it looks very different. And again, remember, we are assuming that everything is deterministic here. In the next lecture, we are going to make the inter-arrival times and also exam duration stochastic. So that's all for now. We will review what we covered here again next lecture, and then we take it from there. So thank you so much. Bye for now.